Hey, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining our public lands and affordable housing panel. Still a few people trickling in here as we hit the 10 o'clock hour. Let's start us off with just a quick general welcome. So this panel is really growing out of the work of the HDC Transit-Oriented Development Task Force, and is intended to be a showcase of all of the public lands that are going to be available, opportunities over the next couple of years. It's an effort to broaden the conversation from an agency, geographic perspective. We're really fortunate here in King County to work in a county in a situation in which the importance of public land has really risen to the forefront, along with the recognition of the financial resources that are needed to ensure affordable housing development on those sites happens. So we're going to hear from a number of different agencies, from Sound Transit, King County Metro, City of Seattle, and from Arch representing the cities of Bellevue and Redmond. We'll turn it over now to the co-chair of our TOD task force, Rennie Elliott, to take it from here. Oh, and there will be some time for Q&A at the end. So leave your comments, questions in the chat, and we'll try and address them all at once at the end. It is a pretty tight agenda.
Hi, my name is Rennie Elliott. I am a senior project manager for the transit-oriented development program at Sound Transit, and also a newly minted co-chair of the HDC TOD task force. And one of our big tasks on the task force is to kind of figure out the future of this very niche affinity group, and so this is our first attempt at that. Like Jesse said, really trying to think about what made people interested in the TOD task force in the first place, and one of the big things that drew people initially was the opportunity to learn about publicly owned property available for affordable housing. So we thought, well, that's much broader than just TOD. And Sound Transit, of course. So this was a pretty neat opportunity to kind of, again, broaden the people here, the public agencies, and allow them to kind of share what's going on and what's coming up, so that the HDC community can follow along and participate. So I am going to introduce our presenters today. And I'll just go ahead and introduce. I don't think we have everyone on video, so that's okay. But first, I'd like to introduce my co-chair, Allison Lorig, Senior Vice President for Real Estate Development at Bridge Housing, and one of my former bosses. And then next, I'll introduce my current boss, Mara D'Angelo. She's the Deputy Director of Transit-Oriented Development at Sound Transit. We are also very excited to have Charles Mason, Acquisition, Preservation, and Strategic Initiatives Manager from the City Office of Housing, or City of Seattle Office of Housing. And then next we have Sarah Lovell, who is the TOD Program Manager for King County Metro. And finally, we have Patrick Tippy, Housing Stability Program Manager for Arch, who's going to share some really exciting opportunities over on the east side in Bellevue and Redmond. So with that, I will turn it over to Allison to say hello.
You're muted. Yeah, you're still muted, Allison.
Right. Well, that's unfortunate. So I'm sharing an office space this afternoon, so I have a little bit of that problem. But thank Thank you all for joining us today. It's really exciting to actually have a good turnout, because I think I joined a little late, but we were getting really good coverage from our cities and local funders for the TOD task force. But I do think it's really a great opportunity to really, especially after the summer, take a step back and sort of see what people have been working on and where we're going. What we are going to be doing today is actually just opening it up for the agencies with publicly owned properties for affordable housing to talk through what they have coming up and on the books, and trying to keep it fairly short just so that we can stay within our hour. And I look to Rennie and Jesse to help us stay on time a little bit. So moving forward, I think I'm going to turn it back to Rennie and her team to jump in.
Thanks, Allison. First, we have Mara with some sound transit properties that are coming up. And Mara and all the presenters, just say next slide when you want me to change the slide.
Thanks, Rennie. I was wondering about that. All right. Well, hi everyone. I'm Mara D'Angelo from Sound Transit, and was going to start with our U District 45th and Roosevelt site, located in Seattle. It's a block or two from our U District light rail station, and we think it could yield 200 or more units of affordable housing on the high end. For this property, we've received our board's approval to offer the site for affordable housing, and we've been working on an RFP that we hope will actually be released in the next couple of weeks later this month. We recently had a big victory on this site in partnership with the Seattle Office of Housing when the Seattle City Council granted a conditional alley vacation. So the alley shown on the slide here will now be able to be rerouted to kind of turn onto 11th Ave, allowing the site to be developed more logically and more densely. So that's a conditional alley vacation approval, and developers will still need to meet some conditions, including defining a public benefit. We'll be providing more details on that alley vacation in our RFP materials, which we expect to come out soon. We plan to offer this site in partnership with the Office of Housing. They're pre-committing dollars to the RFP, and it will also be eligible for Sound Transit's partnership with Amazon's Housing Equity Fund, and also our partnership with the Commission around 4% bond cap. So stay tuned. That's our next RFP coming out. And you can go to the next slide, Rennie. So we're also actively planning for a 6-acre TOD site that Sound Transit has in Federal Way. For this site, we're not as far along. Our board hasn't officially approved an offering strategy, but we expect we'll offer a portion, but not all of the site for affordable housing. So we're just now getting started on our work to really define the site constraints, do some massing models, market study work, and we plan to kick off community engagement on this site in the next few months, and begin to get input on what the surrounding community wants to see there. It hasn't been formally surplused by the agency, but we expect that it'll be available for redevelopment when it's no longer needed to support Federal Way link extension construction, which is now planned to open in mid-2026. So we'll gain more certainty around the timeline of how and when we'll offer all or parts of this site, probably by next year, but I'd expect an RFP to go out in 2024 or 2025 on this site. You can go to the next slide. Next, we have our Mount Baker East Portal site in Seattle. This site is adjacent to the City of Seattle's UW Laundry site, which they'll be talking about in a minute. we had conducted joint community engagement with the Office of Housing back in 2021 around this site. And we had been looking at the possibility of putting a small number of affordable homeownership townhomes on the north side of the site, the south, and maybe leaving the south side of the site as open space because it's very sloped. Since that time, we've gotten, some new inputs that we think might make it possible to be able to redevelop more of the site than we originally understood. And so we're looking into that now to try to really better understand the site and its redevelopment potential. I'm including on this slide because I still think affordable homeownership townhomes are a likely outcome, at least on part of the site. We'll know more, I would say, over the next 6 months, and we could have an RFP out around the site as early as 2024. Next slide. Lastly, just wanted to mention Mary Moore Village in Redmond. This is the next site for which we intend to begin active planning. Again, our board hasn't approved an offering strategy for this property, but we would expect at least a portion of it will be for affordable housing. I think the Redmond Downtown Link extension is now slated to open in spring of 2025. So the property would be available for redevelopment once the construction staging or the construction use is no longer needed for that site. We're in the process of formally surplusing the site now and expecting to kick off feasibility and market study work in the next 6 to 12 months with an RFP out as soon as 2025. Rennie can correct me if I'm wrong, since she's the project manager for this one. So that's the I would say active affordable housing TOD sites that Sound Transit has on the docket right now. And I can turn it over to the next presenter.
Thanks, Mara. And now we've got Charles Mason from the Office of Housing. And Charles, did you, is there anyone else joining you that we should introduce?
No, it'll just be me this morning. Morning,
All
everyone.
right.
I'm Charles Mason from the Office of Housing. I manage the portfolio preservation, acquisition, and strategic initiatives for the capital investments team here at OH. So what I'll do very quickly, being cognizant of the time we have, is just kind of run through some of the open RFPs that we are anticipating going out this year for our public property or publicly owned land. So next slide. So first I'll start with our Mount Baker redevelopment site. I think you've heard Mara kind of allude to some information about this site already. It's just under 4 acres to the west of the Mount Baker light rail station. Earlier this summer, we released an RFQ in which we were looking to select a primary developer for the site. And we hope to have those candidates that are moving forward announced very soon. And those candidates will be allowed to apply to the RFP for the overall site. Next slide, please. The overall site can include at least a minimum of 400 units. This will be done in partnership with the UW of College of Education. They are looking to develop approximately 34,000 square feet of childcare and early learning research facility on the ground floor of the larger property. We are also working with the Seattle Parks Department to have a piece or a parcel of the site to be dedicated to an active park space. This site will also be subject to a community workforce agreement. Next slide. So next we have our, and I will just say that RFP is coming out this fall for 2024 or 2023. Lake City Community Center is located in Lake City, in between Northeast 127th Street and Northeast 125th Street. This is an RFP we hope to have out end of fall, early winter. This will be done in partnership with the Seattle Parks and Recs Department. I think next slide, some of the big priorities here are being able to connect the community center to affordable housing in the surrounding neighborhood. As I understand it, it's a very heavily used community center, so that will be central to this RFP. This site will also have a CWA. Next slide, please. And our last slide is South Park RFP, which is about 12,000 square feet located between South Henderson and 14 Ave South. I think this site was a response to working with community to bring much needed affordable housing to South Park. So next slide. And so you will see a lot of the priorities that have been highlighted for this RFP come directly from working with community. This is what OH has heard from community. So the timing for this RFP will be hopefully sometime in early 2024. Turn it over to our next speaker.
Thank you, Charles. Next, we've got Sarah Lovell from King County Metro.
All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. And I am just going to talk about our two properties that are furthest along in terms of getting ready for new projects, and for which we actually have a pretty decent idea of when they might come to the market. So next slide, please. So the first one I'm going to talk about is the work that we've been doing at the Kenmore Park and Ride. This project, the reason there are two pictures just for background is that it's basically been this effort between Sound Transit, King County Metro, and the city of Kenmore to talk about a larger vision for redeveloping both the property that King County Metro owns, which is the 5-acre site that you see on top, and potentially sort of a larger vision for property that we both lease from the adjacent owner and a property that owner owns outright and operates. And so we have spent a good chunk of time, I think at this point, it's been about 4.5 years in concept development, and we have recently been doing work to actively update the capacity studies and the market work to support an upcoming offering that I hope to have ready. I say 2025, I hope it's sooner than that. But I'm just being realistic in terms of the being that this project has the potential to be maybe a 3-phased offering. For sure, I know that Metro will be offering what we own outright. What I don't know yet is exactly how we'll package or what that might look like with the property in the larger vision and with the adjacent property owner. So Metro has a very long-term lease for a piece of that property, but not all of it. And so we're still working out the details. But again, anticipate having an updated concept and working through partnership agreements and things that might be necessary to support an RFP that hopefully, again, will be out in 2025. So next slide. And then Burien Transit Center is much simpler and also coming right along. So we are actually midway through our community engagement for the redevelopment of a surface parking lot that's about 3/4 of an acre right next to the Burien Transit Center garage. We will be concluding that engagement at the end of October, and I'm working with DCHS funders at the county who have $10 million set aside for the redevelopment of a project here. In looking at the capacity of the site, it's not that big, but we are anticipating and seeking a project between 100 and 130 units. The outreach that we're doing now is to help us really settle on, what kinds of populations we're prioritizing, and if there is anything specific on the ground floor that that we should be thinking about, all those details, as you all know. I'm actively working on the RFP right now and hope to have this out in early 2024. So that's all I have. I guess I will turn it over to the next speaker.
Great, thank you, Sarah. And now we have Patrick Tippy from Arch, and he's joined by several colleagues on the east side, including Jeff Churchill from the city of Redmond, who will be available for questions later, and his colleagues Lindsay Masters and Elsa Kings. All right, Patrick, it's your turn.
Great, thanks, Rennie. First, wanted to talk about the first site we had is the City of Bellevue owned site. And if you go to the first slide here, city calls it the Kelly site. It's approximately 50,000 square feet, right across from the 130th Avenue station in Bellevue. This is between downtown Bellevue and the Microsoft campus. The goal of the development is to create affordable housing, artist housing, and commercial space to complement the Bellred Arts District. The commercial space in this is likely to be studios and workspaces for creatives, as well as a small performance theater. The development potential of the site with the current zoning could be 230 units or more. High rise is a allowable development type on this location. And the city is looking to do a RFP for this site and select a developer likely in 2024, although that's still to be finalized. Next slide, please. Bellevue has 3 other sites that they're in planning stages for and looking to include some portion of affordable housing development in those sites. Weren't able to share them explicitly today, but hopefully in the next 3 to 6 months, those will be able to be shared. They're located in the Wilburton and downtown station areas, adjacent to transit locations. One of the sites is a little bit smaller, at a ½ acre. One of the sites is quite large, 4 acres. And those will have varying development capacities based on the size of those sites and may not include all affordable housing given the scale of the development opportunities with those and with the current and future zoning to allow high rise at most of the sites. And 2 of the sites are included in Bellevue's planning for the Grand Connection, which for those that aren't familiar, that effort in Bellevue connects Lake Washington through downtown, potentially creating some pedestrian overpass or lid type structure over 405 to the Wilburton neighborhood. So kind of part of a long range planning effort that the city is undertaking to activate the station areas once as those stations are coming online. So those are the kind of the opportunities in the city of Bellevue. Moving into city of Redmond. First site, there isn't a specific timeline identified for the release of this, but this is likely to be the first site available via offering. This is right across from the downtown Redmond station. The zoning allows for up to 6 stories, although that may change with upcoming comprehensive plan updates. Also, the draft regulations would be eliminating off-street parking requirements for multifamily housing. And it would be a vacant site for the developer once that site is offered. The next site is part of the city of Redmond's municipal campus. This is taking over what is a current surface parking lot. Zoning allows for mixed use up to 6 stories. Again, would also have the comprehensive plan may result in a zoning change and also may eliminate the off-street parking requirements. It's really well situated to a lot of amenities, grocery, schools, parks, and library, and located near the City of Redmond Transit Center and Rapid Ride lines. But this is probably the second site that the city will be releasing after the site on Cleveland Street. And the final site that the city will be offering is Avondale Park. Part of the property is currently being operated as transitional housing and has been for the last number of years. It was originally acquired from a federal property surplusing, which required the use to be serve people exiting homelessness. That provision expires in 2027, and the zoning there is R30 multifamily. currently half the site is vacant and city, so there's lots of different opportunities there for whether that's multifamily or townhouse development types. And I think that's it for me.
Thank you, Patrick. Wow, we encourage the presenters to be very short with their comments, and you guys did a wonderful job. We're only halfway through our hour, which is great because that means we have a lot of time for questions. But first, I just want to take a moment to thank our presenters for, volunteering to present today and for sharing information about their properties and putting together the slides, which we will make available to people who attended this presentation. The first thing I wanted to say, just because I'm someone who always thinks after I say something, oh, I should have said that, is if any of the presenters thought of anything else that they wanted to note about their properties. All right, well, then let's go ahead and move to questions. Does anybody have any questions? You can, let's see what the format is here. You can either type a question in the chat, you can raise your hand, or maybe just even pop on camera to ask a question.
I'll get us started off here. And yes, presentation will be sent to all of the attendees, all of the registrants and everyone on the TOD task force list. When thinking about affordable housing development, the surplusing of property for low or no cost is obviously a huge assistance to that. But what we're seeing in terms of the realities of development in the region now is that it takes subsidy beyond that. And I was wondering, for each of the sites that have been laid out, are there any that have additional public resources attached to the sites in terms of the RFPs? And is there, I know there's some, well, let's answer that question first.
Yeah, thanks, Jesse. I think maybe we can start with Mara at Sound Transit. She can describe the resource alignment process that Sound Transit goes through for each of their surplus properties. And then maybe others can join in and share kind of what their strategy or process is for that.
Thanks, Ernie. Yeah, Sound Transit has been working really hard to try to align resources in advance of our RFPs. I spoke to the resources that we've tried to align with our U District site, which is the next one coming out, including City of Seattle funding and eligibility for both Amazon funding and commission bond cap through our partnership with those entities. The remainder of the sites that I mentioned, although, we intend to be coordinating well in advance of release to try to align resources for those sites, we're not at the point yet where we can kind of speak to specific commitments to them.
Thanks, Mara. Anyone else have anything to share about their process? Sarah, you mentioned reaching out to your friends, perhaps across the hall at the county, to try to align some resources for your sites.
Yeah. So for example, we, similar to Sound Transit, definitely have conversations with funders, depending on the location of the property, what kind of project we're seeking, things like that. For Burien specifically, Burien was actually one of the very first properties that received an allocation from the TOD bond fund. And in the last budget, the allocation that was given at the time was 3 million, which even then seemed like not enough. And so in the last budget, an additional 7 was allocated for the site. So now there's 10 in Burien, and certainly there will probably be, other funds that will have to be layered. But in the offering that'll go out next year, there will be that $10 million set aside for that property, and it'll be a joint application with DCHS. So that's what I know of those two. Certainly Kenmore is another property where I would work towards some kind of resource alignment as well. But at this point, there isn't anything currently set aside for that project yet. So yet being the operative word. So
Thanks, Sarah.
mhm.
Patrick, I see you.
Yeah, if the city of Bellevue is looking to allocate some funds along with the property for the Kelly site and considering that for the other parcels that they have, understanding that's been a successful piece to attracting developers to sites. And I think Jeff has some information to share there for Redmond.
Thanks, Patrick. Good morning, everybody. The city of Redmond has $10 million allocated in its current biennial budget for affordable housing. The money hasn't been committed to any one of these 3 sites that Patrick shared, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if some of that money was committed to these sites.
Great. And then Charles, I didn't know if you wanted to add anything. I think it's pretty typical that when the city of Seattle puts out property for offering, it usually comes with some OH resources.
That's right. Typically for all of our RFPs, we have resources allocated, and for all of the RFPs that I presented on today, we have currently associated some funding for all of those sites in conjunction with, I think, as Mara mentioned, working with Amazon, particularly on the Sound Transit U District site as well. So if you try to conversate or have connections with other public funders or other funders in the area as well.
Thank you. Allison? You're on mute.
All right, did that work?
Yeah.
All right, there we go. Yeah, so from the standpoint of the local funders in the cities and jurisdictions putting property out, I was wondering if you had sort of thoughts of rules of thumb for where you try to land in the public subsidy when you put out the RFPs. So I think people have heard me talk before about Northgate being one of the last affordable housing RFPs that actually came out at the time as fully funded. That was back when our gap was about $100,000 per unit. And I was wondering, just with the oversubscription on so many of our funding sources, is there a target that people are trying to work towards? I don't hear anything. So
Anyone want to take that on?
Nobody wants to answer.
Yeah, I mean, Mara might want to share from Sound Transit. You know, we are just always trying to get as much as we can in the offering, but you know, certainly a fully funded project is a big deal to put out on the streets, and you know, and isn't, I don't think is typical in the current environment, you know.
Yeah, I would
go
echo
ahead.
that. I think we're trying to get obviously as much as we can and be competitive, and also be respective of maybe other projects or things that we have going on. For example, we are, as many of you may know, our NOFA applications are coming due, and so we have to be kind of prudent with each of our pots of funding and make sure that we have as much funding available for all of the projects within our pipeline. So it's as everything is kind of moving in flux these days, it's really hard to pinpoint particular numbers to strive to.
I would just add that I think in terms of the work that we do in pre-development to kind of sort of assess what that gap is and what it means to have a fully funded project, part of the challenge is, you know, obviously the modeling is just modeling. And so by the time we've gone through a process of selecting and negotiating, I mean, I'm, speaking to everybody that knows this better than I do, but certainly those numbers have shifted. And so we do our best to, at least at the point where we are looking at financial feasibility and capacity of each of these sites, put a number that seems realistic in terms of what that funding need is out into the world and see, again, like everyone said, like how much of that we can get attached to the RFP. So there's definitely a struggle in having what that number might have initially been be the number that you really need when you are in a place where you're trying to close financing and whatnot. But there, it is a consideration that is looked at sort of as we get ready to ask for what is available. And then we just have to do the best with what is out there. So it's the intent, but not the reality, I think.
A little difficult right now in the inflationary market we've been in.
I would just add, I think we've tried it all ways now. We've tried to fully fund a project in an RFP. We've tried an RFP with no funding. We've tried in between, and I'm not sure we've ever had one that didn't have to come back for additional resources because of the additional complexities with public land, and especially the ones near transit where there's a lot of transit and other infrastructure getting attached to, and then planning coordinated with that. So, I'm not sure what the best practice is anymore. I think that like long ago, we thought it was, let's do our best to estimate what the gap's going to be and then have a competition. That's who can most efficiently product.
Having unlimited resources would be lovely.
Yeah, sure.
Not practical.
I think for us, like right now, our bigger challenge isn't so much the soft funding as it is the tax credit pipeline and how we stage all of these, because they're all really exciting opportunities. We were just doing math about like we could go out to 2035 with just the public sites alone, and we still want to support other developer driven projects as well. So figuring out how to creatively develop some of them. And I'll just mention Kenmore put out an RFP this year. Also, they had a vision wanting to do dense home ownership development, which would have been amazing and not, sort of jam the tax credit pipeline. So that's a nut we all still want to crack as well, and want to figure out what partners we need to talk to and take the time to develop those models as well.
I do have a question. I'm Jim Buchanan with King County Equity Now. How is racial equity folded into this process?
Anyone want to take the lead on answering that from I'm guessing probably from a process perspective or a community engagement perspective?
Well, I can take a crack at it from King County's perspective. So a couple different ways. I think primarily it's addressed in how we do the development of our project goals and the community engagement for each of these projects that we put out. So we have been trying to tap a very equitable set of community stakeholders that would be representative of both the community that the project is going into and populations that are not as historically well engaged in these processes. And so it's really become a real focus on getting a good and sort of a depth of opinion and trying to take a step back as a public entity and let community drive what that process looks like and what the goals actually are. So, but that's not all of it, right? That's just a piece of it. And then there's also an equity analysis that the county conducts before we put out these RFPs, just to see if we think that we're actually in the right ballpark in terms of what the project is doing. If we're aware of resources that might need to go to the project, or if we are really considering what the impacts and opportunities the project presents are going to be available to, all the populations we think should be able to participate and benefit from the project. But I think it's a moving target. And I think each project feels like we're kind of reinventing the wheel that way. So I think there's a lot of work to be done still. I think there's a lot of conversation about, are we doing this the right way? Are we doing enough? And I don't know that we feel great about where it's at, but it certainly it's at the forefront of conversation, and it's something that's considered sort of as the process of, we have an idea for a project all the way through, we are selecting the development team, and we have a project we're moving through to bring to the market, like all the way through. It's a consideration of the county, and whether or not we're really doing as much as we should be doing is a question we're always trying to answer and improve on. So right now, that's sort of the best answer we have, but it's definitely something that we are working towards having a better answer for in each project.
Well, we think that having a concrete plan on how equity is dispersed properly, racial equity is important, and to be able to have a clear answer to that question is crucial. We need to have a clear answer on the effects and how is it affecting the racial equity. How are the projects facing and dealing with racial equity? And what are the results, goal and objectives for that? And it sounds like to me it's really not focused on. There might be some bits and pieces that hang around, but there's no plan. We would like to see a plan. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. It's always important to hear that, to have a concrete plan is important for each project and overall.
So how can we move the line in the sand regarding that?
I think that's a good question and a good challenge for us all to think about as we position these properties.
Yeah, move the line in the sand rather than kicking the can down the curb, down the street, would be great.
Cindy, I don't know about all of the agencies who've presented today, but I know that I think King County, or at least I've heard from King County and OH that they've got their processes. I think probably Sarah is the one person at Metro may not have had as many properties that go out. That maybe that at this meeting here we actually don't have the folks who can talk to that. I think last year or a year and a half ago we tried to talk a little bit about what this looked like, but that was a while ago, obviously. And I'm not exactly sure who those people are at the various agencies. But maybe King can help.
Well, I do think that's an important issue, especially like considering Sound Transit and the racial, equity issues with putting, light rail act grade in what included, down the middle of the Rainier Valley, county has labeled racism as a public health issue. So from our understanding, that means that this lens of how that is being resolved and addressed should be applied to all basic activities of the county. Is it exacerbating the problem, perpetuating the problem, or mitigating and remediating the problem. And there definitely should be specific strategies and measurement points as it relates to the process from, you know, each agency. As a developer, we under small emerging Black-led developer, we understand the challenges that we're faced and having to partner with other organizations, et cetera, et cetera. And so there's definitely inequities among, you know, that have persisted amongst the developer community. It's been addressed at WishFIC level, but I think at every level where there's development activities happening, from property being made available for acquisition to development of affordable housing to, you know, the other who's developing, who's building, who's accessing, you know, commercial space, residential space, et cetera, and how this does address closing the racial wealth and resolving the racial, the public, you know, the disparities that exist that result in higher death rates, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and all the other quality of life indicators. So I think King County Equity Now has, you know, done a lot to push the ball on that, and maybe intentional collaboration to clarify, and if there's questions that need to be answered, to develop those plans can be a possibility for each agency that's represented. So that's what I would encourage us. One follow-up is that we get the clear that, you know, that information can be made clear directly from each agency.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing that, and for highlighting, you know, some of the work that the Housing Commission and the county have been doing around that. And I think that's probably a good starting point. I know at Sound Transit we always try to align with our forward thinking funding partners on projects when it comes to those to racial equity outcomes in projects. Any other thoughts? Any other questions? Let me see. We've got something in the chat. Kathleen, would it be helpful to convene partners to create a shared set of metrics for racial equity that all the agencies could adopt? I think Jim answered that question in the best possible way, right? So thank you. All right, any questions, thoughts?
Will this deck be sent out, and next steps to everyone on the call?
Yeah, we will make the slide deck available, and any next steps. I think we're hearing there's some, well, not some, a good energy around, being able to answer the racial equity question concretely. And so, Kathleen, I think, created a good idea that, we need to get some folks in the room and work harder on this topic, right?
Well,
Kathleen, did you have anything else? Your hand's still up.
Yeah,
I hadn't raised my hand earlier. It's just, I was going to offer to King and Jim that Homestead is available to help support putting together anything with your leadership. So just let us know how we can help. I think it's good to center their voices in that process as raising the issues. So we're just here as a resource to help.
and I was just going to add that I think, at least at the county, there have been a number of different initiatives undertaken to try to have a more concrete answer. And I think the problem for me, as I was thinking about my answer and the lack of clarity of it, is that I think that pieces of it have been worked, pieces of the approach have been worked in a bunch of different spots within the county. And what I can commit to do for you all is pull those things together so we can actually see what we have. It's likely not complete. It likely needs to be improved, but there has been, since the equity cabinet took up their work a few years ago, there has been a recentering, and there should be a more concrete answer. But I think at this point, I know this much about, the specific process for a development project. And I believe that there are answers in a number of different places across the county that likely just need to be brought together to see if it's actually sufficient or still deficient. And if it is, what we need to do to improve it. So.
Thank you. I think this is a great time. I think these projects represent at least maybe $500 million in development potential, somewhere in that range, maybe more. So again, I agree that a lot of times there's fragmented initiatives, different departments are doing them, executive, public health, but how do you actually align them to be applied? The city has it, the state has it. So how do you apply it, align it to have a line of sight through projects, particularly when such a great amount of resources are being deployed that could actually impact these desired objectives, if intentional.
Yeah, I think that's a key word, the intentionality. Carrie from the Housing Commission, I saw your hand up, but now it's down, but I want to give you an opportunity to speak if you have something to say or share.
Yeah, I was just going to throw in that as has been alluded to a couple of years ago in response to a call from King County Equity Now, among others, the commission reset its 4% bond or 4% tax credit and bond policies after 2 rounds of that, and kind of seeing the results and what has worked and looking for ways to improve that. That policy. We're going to be conducting a series of conversations over the next 8 to 9 months. Actually here at HDC in the CBO affinity group meetings. If you are a community-based organization interested in being a part of those conversations, please email me. I will drop my email in the chat, and I'll let you know how to get connected.
Great. And Carrie, as co-affinity groups, let's see how, this group can be helpful to that or support those efforts.
Yeah, sounds great.
Allison?
Great. And then, yeah, I was just going to add also one of the items that came up when we did talk more about equity and community-based organizations a while back was whether or not there were also other resources to help that process. So there's obviously the fact that there's no cost land for affordable housing. The commission's been changing some of their requirements, but in thinking from my standpoint specifically about, say, retail space and being able to provide those spaces for minority or new startup or more community-based, those funding sources don't necessarily work in our current models because all of the funding is really geared towards the housing itself and not the auxiliary spaces that can be created, and whether or not they're agencies or departments in the cities that we're working at in that also have that ability that could also come to the table as we're looking at the opportunities of the various sites. I don't know if in the city of Redmond or Bellevue that's been a consideration yet. Maybe not.
I think it's, that's another important topic to try to rally around from a resource perspective. I think everyone knows the power of placemaking with small and community-based businesses. Those are the places that you want to be and spend your dollars. And you know, there aren't a lot of pots for that, and it'd be awesome if there were resource pots for that, especially around, you know, business displacement. That's been a big thing I've been hearing as I've been attending different comp plan community meetings around the county is, you know, existing business owners, you know, they want to see the communities densify, but those new retail spaces are very tough for them to afford or to physically fit into.
Speaking to that from Arch's perspective, you know, there's not really a one size fits all perspective on the resources for various commercial spaces. I think it depends on the objective of the particular jurisdiction, in this case for the surplusing, but also the development partners and through their community engagement. I did speak a little bit about the Kelly site in Bellevue. If that's part of the long-standing plan for further cultivation of the Bell Reds Arts District, addressing that displacement of the 80+ artistic businesses and nonprofits that currently operate in the Bell Red neighborhood. And part of that is to an opportunity to create space for them at the 130th Avenue station.
Yeah, that's great, Patrick. And yeah, so intentionality on you know, the offering strategy side, and then, you know, at least on the east side, I know Microsoft is making some grant funds available for commercial spaces in affordable housing developments. So that's another interesting, you know, one very small thing that exists out there. Beth, let's take, oh, okay, all right, the questions are coming now. We have 3 minutes. So Beth and Alberta, and we'll try to keep them quick. If not, we'll try to get your questions answered after this, or maybe, you know, maybe we can go over a minute or two.
Hi, yeah, thank you. So I wanted to say that that I'm the co-chair of the tax credit affinity group. And we were talking with Lisa Vatsky yesterday, and she was talking about how she was working with King County and Seattle to have a more aligned definition on the community-based organization, you know, definition and what that means for each of the agencies, and the equity focus for each of those agencies. So at the next tax credit affinity group, we'll be talking King County, I hope will be there, and City of Seattle, as well as the commission, to talk through that. Thank you.
Thanks, Beth. Alberta?
Thank you. I really appreciate this conversation. I'm Alberta, working at the Office of Planning and Community Development, and me and my colleagues in the Equitable Transit-Oriented Development Group, I wanted to put in a plug. This is really the focus of our work in a longer-term sense, of course. We're looking at the investments coming from the West Seattle and Ballard Link extensions and broader community planning efforts. And so really appreciate Sound Transit's time here and all the public agencies. But we are putting together a community advisory group that will inform how the city approaches anti-displacement efforts and centering community priorities, a broad range, including commercial, housing, homeownership, and many others, to inform ultimately an implementation plan for equitable transit-oriented development. So I really encourage anyone on this call to take a look at our website, which I'm going to put into the chat. And again, just appreciate this conversation. So thank you.
Great. And, for all of folks who've mentioned different opportunities to engage on that topic, please send your information and whatever your next meetings are, and we can include those in the email when we send out the slides. Okay, you guys, we did
I would
it.
just like to highlight just real quick, sometimes the like kind of meeting fatigue for the same subject. So, it seems like this may be a forum where some alignment, if we're asking the same questions and seeking to engage community, taken into consideration, even as an equity issue, not overburden community with having to answer the same question at 3 or 4 or 5 different meetings because the agencies are not, embracing the opportunity to align. And so I would lift that up as an opportunity to further pursue as well.
Thanks. Yeah, I think we can all relate to meeting fatigue. So that's an important point to make. How can we work together rather than separate in different silos doing the same thing? All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us this morning. I hope you have a nice weekend. Thank you very much to the presenters, but really thank you to the attendees and the people asking questions to make this, what I think was a pretty robust conversation. So we'll keep it going. But first you'll hear from us with slides. So thank you very much. Bye.